so excited to see you and connect with you and have a chat. We haven't had a formal Q&A in a long time. And obviously for those listening in and watching, they've heard our big news that you have recently joined InnovateMR's board. We are so thrilled here. And we thought it would be a great idea to get connected and talk all about you, Kristin Luck, and introduce you further to the industry. For
And
those that don't know you, you are just not only an incredible friend to me and mentor and confidant, but you and I have known each other now for several years. And I was looking at your bio in prep for this. I have it printed here. It's pretty
I work a
long.
lot. It's real long.
It's a meaty bio because you have so many amazing accolades under your belt. I mean, 3 private equity backed exits, advisor and growth strategist at your M&A advisory firm, Scale House, co-founded OTX, co-founded Forefront Consulting Group, which was later acquired by Decipher, and obviously founder of Women in Research, which is an organization that's so near and dear to my heart. And most recently, president-elect of SMR. So you are one busy lady. I can't believe you even have time to talk with me today.
I
How do
always
you
have
do
time
it?
to talk with you, Lisa.
How do you do it? How do you balance everything? It's
I
amazing.
Yeah, I don't sleep. I actually sleep sitting straight up with my eyes open like a robot. I just power down the batteries for a few hours and then start it back up again. No, I'm really good at multitasking, and
Yeah.
um, I think, and you can probably identify with this, but I get a lot of joy out of my work. Like I truly love the work that I do, and I get really energized by it. And I think when you find that perfect intersection of of work that you can do that's meaningful and work that you really enjoy, that you love, I think that's the secret sauce in many ways.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we spend so much time in our day jobs. We better love it, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty brutal existence. So I've actually prepared a few questions that I want to go through with you for our listeners. And the idea is just for us to have a chat and talk about you, your illustrious career, and what you see in the future of the insights industry. And so kind of bring out your crystal ball a little bit. But
We'll
I
see.
first want
Usually my predictions are totally wrong, so we'll see. It's funny. Every year at the end of the year, there's a few associations that are like, "Oh yeah, tell us what your predictions are for the next year," and I'm like, "We're going to be doing this and this," and like I look back and I'm like, totally wrong. We never did any of that. I'm always very optimistic about our ability to change and evolve as an industry, and
yes.
then it never fails that yeah, we fail to do most of it,
Mhm.
but
That
baby
is
steps.
so true. I totally agree with that. Because when mobile first hit the scene back in like 2010, 2011, I'd go to different conferences every year and I would get up on the podium and I would say, this is the year of mobile. Watch it. It's going to happen. We're going to see all of our surveys migrate to mobile first, a mobile first strategy. And then every year would come and go. And we were still largely doing our surveys on desktop.
I was
So
going to
I
say, are
too
we
have been
is
wrong.
2022 the year of mobile first? I hope so.
Let's hope. Let's hope. I don't make those strong proclamations like I used to. But certainly when I think of someone that is close to trends and close to what is essentially the heartbeat of our industry, whether it's standards on consumer protection and data privacy, fraud mitigation and quality, or just the future of insights, in terms of layering in data science and other ancillary data sources to help strengthen the position and give clients and brands a more holistic view to what's happening. I consider you really a go-to expert because I think you're pretty plugged into our industry and you have a lot of great connections. So, but before we go too deep into your crystal ball, I want to talk a little bit about your recent appointment to our board, which I'm so thrilled about. Um, Quick question. Why did you choose to come on our board? I mean, I put the offer out there and I was hoping you'd say yes, but why did you say yes? I'm
You
sure
know, you
listeners
told me
want to
to,
know.
Lisa, and I just do whatever you say I do. No, I'm kidding. I think what's interesting, I think a lot of folks don't know the full kind of history around Innovate MR and the founders. And so, as you know, Matt Dusig and I have known each other since we were just we children in this industry. I mean, I met Matt at my first startup OTX, and my co-founder and I somehow convinced him to drop his kind of e-commerce mobile business that he was working on, and completely pivot into doing market research sample, which at the time was kind of a weird sell, but he took the jump. And so fast forward now, what, almost 20 years later, and when I got the opportunity to sit on the board, obviously having an understanding not only of the history of the company and having a great affinity for the founders, but also really seeing where you're taking the company strategically, having an opportunity to talk with the folks at CIBC and understand their vision for the company, as you're now private equity owned, and having great respect for the strategy that you all have laid out. It was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
No,
you know, I
that's so
try to
good.
work with companies where I'm super enthusiastic about the product or service, where I really believe in what they're doing, that I feel like we're aligned on strategy. And I think also, and this is particularly important in the sampling business, is being aligned on what are the most ethical ways of surveying respondents, and how do you provide the best experience for people, which I think has taken a back seat over the years. And I don't think that's necessarily the fault of a lot of sample providers.
Amen to that. Yeah, I could
Yeah.
talk a long time about participant experience and protecting our sample universe. And I have on many occasions at different conferences in the past. Where do you see the industry going? I know that's such a broad, lofty question, and you've already admitted now that you're really great at making these, not so great at making these predictions. But where do you see the industry going, and what do you think is going to be especially disruptive as we
Yeah.
continue to embark on what I've heard others call the roaring 20s? I know we're kind of getting through the pandemic, and we're about
Yeah.
to embark on a great lively time for the industry. But where do you see the industry going in the future?
Yeah. Listen up closely, everyone, so you know exactly what's not going to happen in the future. I'm kidding. One of the things I do when I look at industry trends is I do look at SMR data, and this is an unintentional but maybe very intentional plug for SMR, which is, we do spend an incredible amount of time and resources on tracking industry trends and looking at uh, where things are headed. Not only from a technology and services standpoint, but also from looking at where investment dollars are going, because a lot of that drives a lot of activities that companies, eventually end up adopting. And so when I look at where money is flowing into this space, and I also look at spend year over year, you can see that there's an incredible amount of investment money being put into platforms, whether that's data collection platforms or reporting platforms. Having the ability to really analyze consumer behavior, I think, is of growing importance. And so, that's an incredibly important piece for us. I would say that the second trend or piece that I'm really keeping an eye on is when you look at all the companies that are coming into this space that are more data as a service companies,
Mhm.
or that that have behavioral or passively collected data. That's a really important component, because when you look at the trend in terms of primary questions research, and that would be kind of defined as traditional
Mhm.
research, that primary questions research is decreasing. And so we are going to see an influx of data that allows us to kind of get to the what people did, and then really be relying on primary research only for finding out the why. So why do people do a particular behavior? And I think that is one of the shifts that is going to be hardest for this industry to adopt, because traditionally we have not been great about understanding how to work with other types of data sources. So
Mhm.
we're great about working with primary research data, but the minute another type of data comes into play, we kind of like deer in the headlights. And so I think upskilling firms to have an understanding of how to work really effectively with behavioral data, and when is the best time to use it, and when is the best time to use primary research data, is super important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that take. I mean, I remember when the terminology big data hit the conference circuit several years ago, and then it moved into like data lakes. Everyone was talking about data lakes.
Everyone's been
Uh,
swimming in those data lakes ever since
yeah,
then.
the water's warm, jump on in. Passive metering and tracking across devices, because obviously, one phone is not enough. We have to have multiple phones, tablets, smart TVs, you name it. I think my
Right.
husband is the first to go out to buy the newest, latest tech gadget to make our home even smarter. It's kind of exhausting. So we have so much data coming out of the Brown household that's being tracked and shared into the ether. God only knows where it is. But I
Right.
think you do touch on something that's really important is if we're just looking at that self-reported, self-administered primary research, that's just one slice of a much bigger pie. And I think a lot of clients, a lot of brands out there are overwhelmed with all these different data streams, right? And really be able to mine it and make sense of it. And I think the companies that are going to be especially disruptive are the ones that are coming in and being able to fuse that and really put it in a way that's holistic and comprehensive to give those insights to really help clients and brands out there predict what's going to happen in the future. And speaking of, the future, the past, the present, I think back to COVID, and when COVID first hit, we obviously saw a lot of offline research move online quickly, particularly in certain regions of the world that were a little bit slower to pick up on online research as the primary methodology. What do you think that's going to continue to stay even after the pandemic ends, whenever it does truly end? That's a whole other question in itself. But what do you think's here to stay that was then initially first surfaced because of the pandemic? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, someone actually sent me an article, I think it was yesterday from the New York Times, that basically just said we're just going to keep getting COVID over and over and over again. So it won't be the pandemic will be never ending, but we'll just think of
Yeah.
flu, I guess, from now on. So
Mhm.
um, I do, I do think that there are some companies that made some really fundamental changes to their research methods during COVID that will not go back, and they won't go back because they found more efficient ways of doing things, and also a lot of the methods they adopted have higher profit margins. And so it's been, there have been some clients of mine or firms that I advise that, when we look at going back to doing face to face research, they're like, maybe I want to keep doing it online because it's faster, it's easier, I'm getting data quicker to my clients, and also the profit margins are higher on it, although that, the overall price tag might be lower. And so, there's some trade-off analysis that we have to do there. I'm a big fan of face-to-face for certain types of research, but certainly I think if this pandemic has proven anything, it's that, it's that much of what we do can be conducted online really efficiently, and that we can, there is an opportunity to adopt more technology and more methods when it makes sense for the particular problem or business problem that we're trying to solve. I think the challenge in some of the markets that have been slower to adopt online are more based on software pricing and the pricing of of products that don't make sense for a lot of folks that are in those markets. And you can look at what we did at SMR as a good example of that. We put in a dynamic pricing model so that somebody who is in Latin America isn't paying the same cost as someone in the US. The same goes for software licensing in our industry. There's a lot of folks I was talking with Urpi Tirada, who's one of our SMR reps. I guess she's our ambassador in Latin America now. But at one point, I was having a conversation with her and a few other folks in Latin America about software adoption. And one of the things they said was the reason we haven't adopted more is because we simply can't afford it. It's not within the pricing structure that they have set out for their clients. So it is something I think we need to be cognizant of as an industry when we look at the adoption of certain methods or certain technology platforms. Is does it make financial sense for the market that we're selling into?
No, it's great. It's great commentary. I mean, it's something I'm really proud of. As president of SMR, I think you've done a great job spearheading that initiative. I mean, it was something that rolled out pretty quickly after you took the helm, and I think it's having a really great, amazing impact across the world. And really, this notion of inclusion, that's, I think, another theme that's really surfaced quite a great deal in the last couple of years. Certainly, though, I should say, having been founder of Women in Research, you've been thinking about inclusion and embracing diversity for a much longer period of time. But I think that's been a trend. And I hope it's not a trend. I hope it's something that sticks with us for years to come. But there's been a lot of discussion around DEI in our industry. What are your general thoughts? How are we doing as an industry today? What still needs to change? I think there's a lot that needs to happen, but I want to get your take.
Yeah, I think that this is this is fundamental not only to the dynamic pricing model that we put in at SMR, but fundamental to a lot of Wire's work and some of the change that we've seen in the industry. And I will say that, dynamic pricing was something that we worked on for almost 2 councils before it was finally implemented during my term. So I have a tendency to be a little more of a doer and less of a talker. And so when I see something I want to have done, I just go do it. I don't spend a lot of time talking about it. We had spent 2 councils talking about it, so it was time to implement. So, so I want to say kudos to the councils before me, where I sat on the board and we talked about it. And I think the good thing is there was a lot of thoughtfulness behind what we implemented. We spent a lot of time on it, so it wasn't something we implemented rapidly. But rather that was like years of work on behalf of not only the councils but on the internal team at SMR. Where I think we're doing it, I think we're doing a better job as an industry on diversity. What I don't think we're doing as great of a job on is equity and inclusion. And I think when people think about diversity, they just think about, oh yeah, there's more female faces in the room. But equity means not only do you have a seat at the table, but that that you're being asked to participate. It's inclusion. It's making sure that all things are equal and that it's inclusive. And just having more female faces or folks with more diverse backgrounds at the table, that doesn't do enough if those folks don't feel like they can speak up and that they have a say and that they can impact the conversation or the discussion that's going on. So I think that's an important part of it.
I mean, I think you've done such a great job highlighting that challenge in our industry all these years. I mean, honestly, I've said this to you one-on-one before, but being part of Women in Research and joining Wire Exec, that first retreat that I went to years and years ago, it was game changing for me, Kristin. Like, it woke me up.
Oh.
It made me realize that I have to just go after it in terms of my career and be a noisy wheel, be a squeaky wheel, and really advocate for myself and think about all of those dynamics. And so it's just been an absolute pleasure working with you and collaborating with you through the years and being part of that amazing organization. So, for anyone listening in, if you're sort of on the fence on whether or not to get involved with Wire, and I should say men and women are welcome. There's a lot of men that are amazing allies and advocates for us over at Women in Research and are at the events, go to the networking events. And it's been incredible. So if there's folks out there listening and watching us right now and you're on the fence about joining, just go for it because you will not be sorry. It's just an awesome, awesome community of amazing leaders and insights professionals that want to create more equity and have a more equitable workplace. So it's been awesome. So I want to talk a little bit, shift gears a little bit around the world of private equity and your work as an M&A advisor. And I have to tell you, I've been involved in a lot of acquisitions throughout my career, but more from like an operational integration standpoint, never on the deal side. And wow,
it's a rude wake-up call.
I knew there is a book in me. I know that someday I will write a book, and maybe this is the topic because there's so much that people don't necessarily communicate about that journey when you decide as a company that yes, you're going to take on investment. And what does that look like, and how can that be structured, and what does the journey and the process look like? So I got a really quick education through the help of our founders and our wonderful partners over at CIVC. So I feel so much smarter now than I was last summer when we were about to embark on this journey. But talk to me a little bit about M&A activity last year. What's happening in Q1 of this year? It's been very busy. Where is it going in the future? I'm going to ask you to predict again because I have some ideas on that. It's been a really frothy, very active market in our space. So I'm curious to get your take on it.
It's still super active. Yeah. I mean, there has been an unparalleled amount of investment capital coming into this vertical for the last 2 years now. And 2022 is going to be even bigger than 2021, which is kind of unbelievable because I think there's about 8 billion that was, invested just last year. It's a growing interest. And I think, there's a saying that data is the new oil, and that I think has been proven out by the amount of investment capital that's coming in. I do think that we are going to see some right sizing of some of the tech valuations that came in the last couple of years. You can see this in some of the earnings reports that we're seeing from from Qualtrics. There are some other tech providers and firms that got some outsized valuations last year, and we're seeing some of those get right sized in the public markets. And the public markets are a good indicator of what's going to happen in the private space. That said, there's just an incredible amount of quote unquote dry powder in at least in the private equity space, and folks are there's more interest in buying companies than there are companies to buy. And so I'm constantly kind of hunting and looking for firms for my clients to buy. It's been interesting working on the M&A side of the business. Lisa, to your point, when you went through your first M&A process on the deal side of things, it is a huge wake up call. I mean, when I sold my first firm, OTX, it was like a full body cavity exam for like 6 months because I had no idea what I was going into. And so, when I started advising on M&A and I got my investment banking license, gosh, I thought if there's one thing that would benefit other founders that I could bring to the table, it's having gone through that experience myself as a founder, so that I can help people avoid that painful full body cavity exam
Mm-hmm.
for every
Totally.
process moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that because now I feel like, God, I know so much more than I did going into that process. And I just want to, anyone I talk to, I'm like, okay, here's what you got to do if you're thinking about going up for sale. Like I
Yeah.
give them the step by step just to really start thinking about what's involved in that preparation and really preparing yourself for the stamina that's required.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
you know,
intense.
and we did it during Q4 because we like a challenge.
It's all right. So did I with Decipher.
Yeah.
Jamie and I sold during Q4. In fact, I think we closed the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So
I don't know why we did that to ourselves because
just
obviously for those
brutalized
listening,
ourselves.
Q4 is obviously a very, very busy time in our industry. So it was challenging, but yeah, you have to have a lot of stamina
Yeah.
to really go through that. And it's a journey for sure. And
Yeah.
one that I'm really grateful for.
I think too, just being educated on you know what the I guess the temperature of the market is, what the company is worth,
Mhm.
and I think this comes back to one of the comments you made earlier about advocating for yourself and your own value. Like, gosh, it's always been super hard for me to negotiate on my own behalf for whatever reason, but man, I am like you know I'm like a wildcat when it comes to negotiating for my clients and like figuring out what the valuation should be and how I'm going
Mhm.
to advocate and market for that. And I think that's that's something that a lot of founders have to understand going into the process, is like you're your own best advocate, and that can be challenging for a lot of folks.
Yeah, I think what you describe, a lot of people struggle with that. I just think different points in my career, I was having a hard time kind of advocating and negotiating on my own behalf. But if I'm negotiating on behalf of the company, I can be super tough.
Right.
It's just it's a weird, it's a strange dynamic. But I think half the struggle is just to identify that exists, and then you can start to put tactics and steps in place to counteract that to really make sure you lean in on what's best for you and your career. I've seen some commentary on LinkedIn recently that's talking about, are we headed to a recession? And it's interesting. I changed jobs. I actually joined USAMP during the last big global recession in '08,
Uh-huh.
'09. I think you started a business, didn't you, around that same time period?
I started my business before the last recession, but
Mhm.
I was maybe a year into Decipher at that point. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and it's always a lot of fun when you have to make tough decisions and pay cuts and all the things that you do when you're in a recession to keep a business afloat. We also had the additional fun of having our line of credit pulled from us in the
Mm.
middle of it, which is always great. We'd never been late on a payment, nor had we ever really overextended on our line of credit, and yet we still got it pulled. So it's always fun looking for a new bank to take you on for a line of credit during a recession. But yeah,
Sounds
there's
like
some
a fun
unique
time.
challenges for sure. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think if you look at what is going on in the financial markets, like technically we already bottomed out below where we were with the dot-com crash, which is
Hmm.
actually, you're right. My first business, OTX, I launched like maybe 6 months before, well, maybe a year before the dot-com crash. Uh, it's interesting though. What I think is interesting about research is that even though, yeah, businesses in the sector have struggled during the recession, there are a lot of businesses that do exceptionally well because
Mhm.
for many clients, because they have less money to spend on marketing, they're going to spend more time testing because or more money testing because they want to make sure that the ad they take out to market or the creative or the product is really dialed in. They don't want to take any risks on it. And the number one way to mitigate risk is to do the research behind it. So
Yeah.
for many
Yeah.
folks, a recession can be a real boom if they have the right that right client and product mix.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. I mean, I think a lot of people at the start of COVID thought, oh my God, are we going to implode? And yeah, the first couple of weeks were scary for everyone, right? We
yeah,
had some networking events, virtual networking events through Wire, where all the women were getting together, being like, what's happening? But I think once the dust settled, we really got down to business and realized, I don't want to say that we were impervious to the pandemic, but I mean, we had, record breaking growth rate in 2020 and 2021. And so, I don't know that we're impervious to a recession if there is one that, fully comes about here in the next year or so. But I do think in comparison to other industries, we should be in a pretty stable position because there's always questions that need to be answered. And when the stakes are high, what better thing to do than to do the research and the due diligence to make sure you're going in the right direction. So it's a
yeah,
great point.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So I remain bullish, even though the market looks bearish.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I made a mistake of checking my 401k the other day and I quickly closed that window.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, note to self: set it and forget it.
Yes, absolutely. You've taught me
401k.
that. You've said it's all about the
Yeah.
long game.
It
So,
is.
we
Yeah, it's
yeah.
it's really interesting. So my business partner and I run a fund, and one of the things I always people are like, "Oh my gosh, are you taking a bath in the markets right now?" And I was like, "Well, no, because we haven't sold anything.
Mhm.
Don't sell it, you haven't lost anything."
Yep, yep. Hang on
So
to it.
I think that's part of it's being able to, just like ride it out when it feels real tense. And when I feel nervous about things, I just don't look at them. Yeah. Only when it comes to stock market performance though.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I've got one last question for you. And you strike me as this overachieving person. You're always like overachieving on every front in your life. When you told me you were studying to get your investment banking license, I was like, you are nuts.
I
Uh,
was not.
yeah,
Yeah.
then living
1 out of 10,
abroad,
do not recommend. Very hard.
it is very hard. I've only had a slice of visibility into that world, having worked with an investment banker in our most recent transaction, and it's a tough gig. It's a really tough gig because you have
Yeah.
to live that way all the time. It's not just like from start to finish for that one particular deal. It's just a world of deals that you're
It is a
constantly.
world of deals. One ends and two more start, and you're always in a process. Yeah, I will say that was, I learned some things about myself. One, I'm really good at learning new things, and I'm really good at studying, and that I actually have more time than I think I have because I had to study every night and every weekend for like 6 months for those exams. And also, like full disclosure, I cried a few times while I was
Yeah.
studying. I have not
Yeah.
felt that dumb in a very long time.
Well,
Yeah,
you passed your tests masterfully, so I
I
think
did.
you're
Yes,
to prove to yourself in the world that you are a class act when it comes
I'm
to investment
capable.
banking. Yeah. So what's the next big new thing that you're going to do aside from joining our board,
Yeah.
which we're really grateful and excited about? But is there anything new and exciting on the horizon? Any new hobbies or things that you're going to delve into?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I might be echoing Sandy Casey when I say that I don't have a whole lot of hobbies. So I'm realizing that maybe I need to get some. I am gonna take an actual vacation this summer. I'm taking 2 weeks, a solid 2 weeks off. And when I take time off, I am completely offline. So that feels like a big thing right now. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, I think the next big thing on my plate really is celebrating SMR's 75th anniversary, which is coming up here in Toronto. It's hard to believe that it's been 75 years as an association, and I've been, part of the journey for a very short period of time in comparison with SMR's tenure. But I'm excited about that, and it's a great opportunity for the whole research community to get together in Toronto, and particularly when many of us have not seen each other for 3+ years.
Yeah. I am so excited. I can't wait. I will be there with bells on. And as a fellow council member, I'll be
Yeah,
there to support you. I'm sure you'll keep me very busy.
I will. Yes, council's going to be very busy during Congress. They always are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this
Yeah.
has been awesome. I'm so thrilled that you've joined our board. It's such an exciting journey to take with you, Kristin, and so grateful for you, for your friendship, for your mentorship. And yeah, we'll do this again soon, hopefully. And I will see you in person next week in
Yeah.
Amsterdam. I can't wait.
Yeah.
So thanks again for the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been fun.
All right. Thanks.